All right, so good afternoon, party people. I'm going to go briefly through the first part of chapter one again. And bear with me, but do take, be attentive to this process, particularly as some of you all have begun to formulate your research topics and questions. I think that some of this will make a bit more sense. So I'm going to go through this over the first 5-10 minutes. Give me one moment here. I'm going to go through this over the first 5-10 minutes or so, and then we'll get into the fresh material. As always, make sure that you're keeping up to speed with the reading. And if anybody is having trouble accessing, let me know ASAP. As always, this lecture is being recorded and will be posted on the course page after this class if there's anything that you need to review. As always, again, we want to focus on what we're trying to accomplish with each chapter. So the goal here was to identify the ways that people decide what's real. And that, again, just speaks to like what is actually true. We have a lot of assumptions about life, that oftentimes go untested. So we want to find out if it's true or not, Devicia, that women who are abused women who are abused, they are more likely to stay in relationships if they have children. We talked about, again, the two foundations of social science or science should be logic and empiricism. So logical, it makes sense, right, that we would expect, and we probably have observed ourselves, women that may have been in physically abusive relationships that stayed. And it just makes sense that they might be more prone to stay because of their children, right? We've observed that enough, unfortunately, where that may be logical. We know, Janaya, that it's logical that when people in isolation, it may spur some mental health issues. But what we want to do in science is find out whether or not our assumptions are true, because there are a lot of assumptions that we make about human beings that are not always true. So, for example, here I put welfare. I think it may have been Janaya that mentioned last week how oftentimes the perception of the majority of people in America who are on welfare, the perception of that is that they're Black. But in science, we try and find out what's real. So what's real is the majority of those people are actually white. But if the public perception, Diamond, is that most of those people are Black, that can affect the level of welfare that we give people. So I believe, I don't have any science to prove this, although I'm sure somebody else has researched it, that if we knew that the reality was that most people on welfare are white, the benefits would probably be more generous. But because we think, okay, we're giving things away to poor Black people, we are, as a society and as a government, we're often very stingy with welfare benefits compared to other nations. So this reality, so knowing what's actually true is really important. That's how oftentimes we may make a decision off of really bad information. The example I gave last time in class was like, that you may have a theory that your boyfriend is cheating. And maybe that's real, maybe that's not. But you're not gonna act on that because somebody tells you, Diamond, well, your boyfriend is cheating. How do you know this? He just seemed like somebody would cheat. That's not gonna be sufficient, right? Now, if they can show you a photo, Janai, like, hey, ain't this your boyfriend right here? That's a bit different, right? I use this example, but that's the only thing that we do in this science. A lot of times there's a mystification about this process. But the only thing that we're doing, right, you got a claim in your head. It could be that people are ill affected by mental health suffers during COVID, and your income is tied to that. You could have an assessment that certain type of people are more likely to have a fear of flying. The only thing we're going to do over these next few weeks is begin to get evidence, the photo on the phone, if you will, to show that this is actually true. Otherwise, you might be making some really bad decisions off of some faulty information. And then the basic options for conducting social science research, that's where we get into methods. I'm going to give y'all a little bit of some free points here. For this particular class, there are several methods, and you want to familiarize yourself with all of them. The main method that y'all are going to use because of the nature of the class, and this is definitely something good to write down, secondary data analysis, secondary data analysis, secondary data analysis, secondary data analysis, secondary data analysis. That is the main method that y'all are going to use. For 1 extra credit point, what are some other methods? Unmute yourself. What are some other research, scientific, social scientific methods?
You just want one, or?
Give me as many as you feel.
Surveys.
Yep.
Observation.
Yep.
Experiment.
Hey, I'm talking to Janiyah. Get out of our conversation. Surveys.
Which ones you see?
You said surveys and observation. What else, Janiyah?
Yeah, field observation.
Good. Good. Okay, now y'all can chime in. 1 extra credit point, Janiyah Barnes. Somebody else give me anything else? Anybody?
Questionnaires.
Say it again, Diamond.
Questionnaires.
Okay, I give you that. Now that's under survey, but that's the more specific type of survey. We'll talk about that all that later on. Give me some more. Anybody?
Interviews.
Good. Very good.
Case
Did
studies.
somebody say experiment?
Wait, who said case study?
Diamond.
Go ahead, Diamond. Who said experiment?
I did.
I don't know your name.
I
Nashaya.
said it too.
See, that's why you got to say your name. Who are you?
Nashaya.
Latasia.
Sure. You sure, Latasia? You're not trying to steal the shine, are you?
I promise you, Dr. Muhammad, I said experiment.
Latasia and Nashai, y'all get a half. Diamond and Janiyah, one extra credit point each. Very good. Now look here, ladies. If I ask y'all on Thursday, y'all gonna be able to tell me this stuff again, right?
Yes, sir.
Word up. So moving forward, and don't worry, there'll be other opportunities. Again, the methods is how we get our empirical data. The empiricism is just, again, where it's not enough for me to be saying, I think that your man is cheating. What empirical evidence do I have? What can you see for yourself that will verify this as being true? Again, when I be saying do your own research, we talk about empiricism. And like I said, it should be logical. And y'all are very logical people. You're already scientists. So things that you have observed in the world that you wonder, like, I think that this happens because of this, but you're not fully sure why. So you may think that Black people, young Black people, are disproportionately stopped by the police. Maybe you just think that. There's evidence, empirical evidence that you can use to show whether or not that's true. And I can assure you it is. Again, we want to do this to be able to predict the future. So in this way, in this way, for example, the danger if people do stay in abusive relationships, Devicia, is obviously some really bad things could happen. If we can predict the situations that are more likely to make abused women stay or leave, then we could literally save some lives if we can understand these processes better. One of the things that's really interesting about social science, like I said before, there's a difference between observing something and observing something systemically. So I'm sure that there have been many conversations, Janiyah Barnes, about, mental health and COVID and suicide in all these months. But now, because of your research, I'm seeing several examples in the last few days, and it gets my attention. But so I'm looking at it in a different way when I see those stories. I just saw something today. They had something on the Today Show, some schools, 19 kids. A kid is young as 9 years old, 3rd grade, committed suicide in this process. I mean, it's
Can you share that with me whenever you get a chance?
I will. I was actually trying to find it beforehand. So yeah, I'll definitely send that to you. And that's for everybody. Because of y'all sources, I'm gonna be looking at things. So yeah, I'll definitely send each of y'all stuff as it comes along. I think you may have a real topic there, Ms. Barnes, and it's actually probably, unfortunately, more data on it than we probably should have. But it stems from a logical observation that you have observed yourself, probably you've observed other people, that when we're isolated, when we're not around folks, human beings, the social nature of human beings is we don't respond as well to that. So it is a logical conclusion to want to study that. And if we know that this has a certain effect, we can predict what that effect may be, and hopefully we can circumvent against that. So if this lasts much longer, maybe there are some things, because the science ultimately, Janiyah, is not about just trying to identify these things, ultimately we would love to find some solutions. That if we see that these things are happening, what can we do? What can we do to try and curb the suicide rate? But if we don't actually know the facts of what's going on, that becomes more difficult. So again, really good questions. And again, it should be a question that makes sense to you and that you're interested in. So Alzheimer's, STDs, retirement age, Alzheimer's, climate change again. These are all issues that if we don't address and study closely now, they can have huge impacts upon us in the future. We want to, again, get away from just tradition and authority. We want you to be the experts on all these topics. Otherwise, you may reproduce some bad ideas like these. And then as we get ready to get us some new information, this is really important as you dig into your research. We want to be very accurate with our observations. Again, you want to so this is where in your research question and hypotheses, I am challenging you to be very specific with your language. It is really important. So again, that right now we may start off with mental health. As we dig into the literature, we might have to be more specific. Maybe we might have to focus specifically on depression or bipolar syndrome. I don't know. You'll know that better than me. We may look at, as opposed to abused women, and I think Davicia, you're already working towards this. Maybe you want to look at abused women between the ages of 18 and 25 as opposed to all women. No wrong answers there. But in our research, what we're mainly trying to do is be very precise with our language, because people will say that, well, all Black people come from single parent households. All women are very emotional. All men are hyper aggressive. All Black men have a criminal record. All white people are rich. So again, have you heard where we may say Nashia, she is always ashy. Has anybody ever made a statement about you where it's always a mainly anybody look, I came to class one day and my ankles was a little ashy. Normally my stuff be on point, but people will make a general observation of a small bit of information and make broad conclusions. Now with Nashia's ashiness, and she probably ashy right now, we're not gonna judge you. I might be a little bit crusty myself, Nashia. Let me see. I'm okay. A couple more hours, who knows? But in all seriousness, we make a lot of really bad decisions off of limited information in our country. So we got to be very careful about that. We'll talk about this in more detail later on. Again, we talked about this before. It's not accurate to say all white people are rich, all Mexicans are immigrants. You see, again, I got specific numbers here. All Black people abuse welfare. No, white people, actually, most of that goes to you all. We got numbers, empirical numbers to show it. Okay. All right. Now, again, right, we left off last week asking, and again, I use this as a ridiculous example, but something that, again, may be important. The major point here is that there's a theory that you need evidence to fully support. So your research questions in many ways are posing a theory that you think that there's a relationship between two variables. You think that there's a relationship between maybe age and abuse, that maybe the younger you are, the more likely you are to stay in abusive relationships. I don't know. We don't know. We're going to study to find out. Maybe the poorer you are, the more difficult it is for you to deal with COVID isolation. I don't know. We'll find out. In this process, we're ultimately going to try and formulate a theory. I'm going to leave this up. This should be brand new, correct? Have I gone over this yet?
No, you haven't. This new.
For sure. Are there any questions about anything that we talked about so far?
No, sir.
Any questions come to mind, let me know. I'll keep this up for a second as I shut my mouth, and then we'll discuss it in more detail. It's always, Latasia, when you see something like theory written in italics, give that some real thought. And again, I need you all to begin to put your own research into these examples. So even though I put female participation in team sports correlated with lower teen pregnancy rates, think about your own correlations. All right, you're still right. Go ahead and finish up responses again. Much of this we'll go over several times, and the lectures are always being recorded. We'll be there for the review, and I highly encourage you all. Some of you, I appreciate Davis Janaya reaching out already in the chat, sending the draft in. I highly recommend that you schedule some office hours, and going forward if there are things that are not fully clear. And be advised, particularly after this week, you'll be highly encouraged to meet with myself, probably at least once a week. There are going to be times where you're going to need to meet with folks in the writing center, and the library staff in very short order are going to become your best friends. It really, and please hear me on this, whether we're talking about this research project or whether we're talking about when y'all get y'all own, when you all are doing your master's thesis, or ultimately many of you all are probably going to get your PhDs. It really does take a village. Like, you are not expected to do this by yourself. So please do not attempt to do that. You ain't got to do that. A theory, a systematic explanation for observations that relate to a particular aspect of life. And Latasia usually explained in some level of cause and effect between two variables. So one theory, for example, and this has been borne out by a lot of evidence over the years. Some of you may have experienced this directly. Female participation in teen sports is correlated with lower teen pregnancy rates. Female participation in teen sports is correlated with lower teen pregnancy rates. So as I said, we're always going to get opportunities for extra credit in here. What are the variables in that example? What are the variables?
Females playing sports and the lower pregnancy rates.
Good. Well, pregnancy rates in particular. Who said that?
Janaya Barnes.
Very good, Janaya
Teenager.
Barnes. Good. Teen pregnancy rate. So because we don't know yet. If we were asked a research question, it might. Well, let me ask you this: how might you formulate this as a research question? Anybody except for Janaya. Sorry, Janaya.
Oh, I wasn't gonna answer.
How would you? And again, you don't lose nothing if you get it wrong. this example, how might you set this up as a research question?
Let me see. How does sports keep the pregnancy rate down for
Nope.
teens? Okay.
You close, you close. Every word is important. It's a good guess, Shorty, but incorrect.
Let's see.
I'll start it off for you. And anybody can pick up. Davisha got the mic, but we'll start it off this way. What is the relationship between
Sports and teen pregnancy or pregnancy rates.
Nope. Close. Every word is important. Make sure y'all looking at this example. It's a good one.
Team sports and lowering teen pregnancy rates.
Nope. Close. Look what's in parentheses. Every word is important. So the question should start.
Correlating with
What is
lower teen pregnancy rates.
What is the relationship between
Female participation in sports and correlated with lowering teen pregnancy rates.
one extra credit point? We'll just word it like this. What is the relationship? That female is really important. Y'all kept saying participation in team sports. That would make it where we're looking at everybody's participation, although technically, no, I can't even say that. I was gonna say technically only y'all can get pregnant. But if we ask that question, we might ask, okay, look, do males and females have a lower rate? That ain't what we're trying to find out. The specific question is, what is the relationship between female participation in team sports? That one word, female, changes what we're trying to look for dramatically. You got to be very careful with that. What is the relationship between female participation in team sports and teen pregnancy rates? What is the relationship between female participation in team sports and teen pregnancy rates? We're not even going to get into the lower or higher yet. We know the lower after we've done the research. But the question is, what is the relationship? We don't know if it's going to be low or high. What is the relationship between female participation in teen sports and teen pregnancy rates? Good job, Nashai. Keep this in mind for your own questions. The wording is so incredibly crucial.
That was the VCO.
That wasn't me, Dr.
Oh, my
Mohan.
bad,
I said female.
My bad, Division, my bad. I am so sorry. Y'all better be saying y'all names. So dig it. All right, so keep this in mind, right? Because what we're going to present is our conclusions are what happens with regularity. These speak to the social regularities. So the research has shown, Davicia, that female participation in teen sports is correlated with lower teen pregnancy rates. That is what the research has shown in the United States. Does that mean that every female that participates in teen sports avoids pregnancy? Does that mean that all of them do? Anybody? No.
No.
Again, we don't want to make. I can go back. We don't want to make an overgeneralization and say that all females that participate in teen sports avoid teen pregnancy. So we never make those kind of claims in social science. Now, what we will say is that it will decrease your chances of getting pregnant. So we might word it, Janaya, that female participation in teen sports lower teen pregnancy rates by 15%. I don't know that that's true. I'm just throwing that out. I'm actually pretty confident it's much higher than that. So in this way, right, like, you know, for some of y'all parents and stuff, y'all may have thought that y'all parents was getting y'all in teen sports and other activities only just to kind of like, you know, widen your interest and get you like extracurricular stuff in your resume. That may be true. But parents know this kind of data. The same way, like, so what do you think that, and again, I don't expect you to know this, do you think that there are any correlations with male participation in team sports? What do you think might be some correlations there? Again, I don't expect you to know this, but logically, can we see any relationship between male participation in team sports and other aspects of their behavior? Anybody?
Like decrease in violence or something.
Excellent, Janiyah. So we see that male participation in team sports reduce their participation in crime. I'm gonna give you one more extra credit point for that. And again, this is an advantage of coming to class and speaking up. This is this represents fewer points that she got to get on the quiz, that she got to get on the annotated bibliography. I know I still need you to do excellent on that quiz and annotated bibliography. So keep this in mind. Again, we can measure academic excellence in many ways. So what you're going to be looking at is what normally happens, Diamond. What normally happens. There are always exceptions in science. But so for example, are there women that earn more money than men in America? Of course. But on a regular, in America, in the world, unfortunately, this is not just reserved to America. Men earn more money than women. Are there Muslims who eat pork? Of course. But regularly, Muslims don't eat pork. There's probably some Asian person somewhere, Latasia, with the name Martinez and Munoz. But regularly, if you see that on an application or a resume or something like that, you can probably it can be a safe assumption that this person is Hispanic because that's regularly routinely how it goes. So what we're going to speak to are the patterns. So when we look at, again, the female participation in team sports being correlated with teen pregnancy, we may see that obviously not every female that participates in team sports avoids pregnancy during her teen years. But if we see that amongst all women, it may be like 10%. But then if we see like, amongst like, athletes, it's only 1%, that would be a pattern that really gets our attention. There'll be some patterns that don't really mean anything at all. There may be some patterns that are just random. Some patterns that we can't explain yet. But what you're going to look at in your social research, Davicia, is what normally happens. There are going to be many, if you looked at the relationship between age and staying in an abusive relationship or the relationship between having children, there are going to be many children that leave immediately. There'll be many women that will stay. What you want to look at is what normally happens, and more importantly, why those regularities occur. Some social theories that you may be familiar with: critical race theory, the Hawthorne effect, strain theory, Keynesian economics. Conflict theory is an economic theory. It's a social economic theory where it's believed that in every society, Davicia, that the powerful people create society in such a way where they get everybody that's not powerful to compete and fight amongst themselves. The Hawthorne effect is a really interesting one. I'll give you, all right, so listen and hear me out here, right? And we'll probably get into this a little bit more later. But the Hawthorne effect involved a very real experiment. So make sure that you listen to the example. There was this company, and this was like in the 1920s or 30s in Hawthorne, Illinois, and they wanted to see what affected the productivity of their workers. That they were working in a factory, Diamond, and they wanted to see what would make the workers work a little bit faster. That if we're producing cell phones in this factory, and I'm your boss, and I want to have as many cell phones produced as possible, again, we believe that human behavior can be correlated. There are things that we can introduce that can make you, and any human being, not just you, Diamond, work a little bit faster. So they thought that if we improve the lighting in this factory, that'll make people work a little bit faster. So we're going to improve the lighting in this factory, and we're going to study. So we see that, okay, before they were producing that each worker will be producing like 100 cell phones each day. Now that we see that, again, empiricism, I gave you a number, 100 cell phones. Now that we introduce the light, another variable, the light is the variable that I'm introducing here, Nishai. The light is the variable I'm introducing. I believe that this variable is going to change your behavior and make you work a little bit more productively. And after a few weeks of observing this, and I have my notes and I just look and see what's going on. After a few weeks of observing this, I find that people are working a lot faster now that I put this light in. It's amazing. But then I stepped out of the lab for a little bit and I just kind of, I stopped observing the workers and I let them do their own thing. We got this great lighting. So everybody's going to be making 125, 150 phones a week now. But now I see that they all of a sudden, everybody dropped back down to 100 again. For 2 extra credit points, why do you think that is? It's a critical thinking question. Why do you think so? Again, we brought the lighting in, their productivity increased. When I was taking notes and studying, I saw it with my own eyes. But now, when they just going back to their normal routine and stuff, now they're back to where they were before. And I thought the lighting helped. What do y'all think went on there? Don't worry if your answer is wrong. What do you think went on there? How would you explain their fluctuating productivity? No wrong answers.
Okay, can you state, like, based off what assumption again? Because that's what I'm getting confused at.
So what variable was introduced to increase their productivity?
Making the light
The
brighter.
light.
Say it again, Diamond.
Making the lights brighter.
Yes. So the variable that we introduced was light. And we're going to look at productivity. Productivity is measured by what? How do we measure their productivity? In my fictional factory.
How much they produced.
How much of what? Yes, Diamond. What were they producing in my fictional factory?
The phones.
Yes. How many were they? So I said before I brought the light in, they were producing one. Each worker was producing on average 100 phones a week. I put the light in and I did study how they worked. And I saw that productivity increased dramatically. Now they're producing 150 phones on average a week. So I'm like, okay, cool. This has been a great introduction. But then I discover, like, after I go back into my office and stuff, and I start to look at the productivity numbers a few weeks later, and I see that we very quickly went back to 100 again. But I thought that the light worked. How would you explain? So if the light did not make them more productive, how would you explain this? Because if the light was going to make them more productive, they should stay at 150, right? But they didn't. So 1 extra credit point for Diamond for thinking through these processes and following through the examples. And it's a critical thinking question, so the answer is not obvious. But what it spoke to here, right, is that what increased the productivity? It wasn't the light at all. What do you think may have increased the productivity? Me studying them. So when people knew that they was being watched, they worked a lot faster. When I went back into my office and I wasn't watching them no more, they went back to doing their normal stuff. The light had nothing to do with it. This is an important example and an important theory for several reasons. So the main thing that they came out of this theory, Diamond, is not that light makes people more productivity. What it does show that when you know that you're being watched by your supervisors, and this is logical, social, human nature, right? When you know that you're being watched, when you working at a cookout or something, Diamond, when you know that your manager is watching you, you're a lot more productive. So one of the things that a lot of these companies did, they didn't put lights on these factories. They might have put a video surveillance camera. So again, the theory that came from this is that when people know that they're being observed, they either are more productive or or at the very least, Nashaya, their behavior is very different. This is important for all aspects of social science. That the person that you are and the type of worker that you are is the person that you are when you don't think nobody's looking at you. You're doing all the chores in the world, Nashaya, when your mama is there staring. But what were you doing when your mama told you to be doing these chores when she was at work? How did you spend your time then? Did you do it? Did you behave the same way as if your mother was standing right next to you? Or did you behave differently? Keep this in mind just in terms of, like, again, with human nature in general. We're talking about factories here, but the main thing in terms of both productivity and just who you are as a person is often influenced by the audience that's in front of you. So everybody's a real good student when the professor is looking. But what kind of student are you at 10, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday when ain't nobody around and ain't nobody forcing you to do this stuff? Those are the kind of questions you'll have to ask yourself in grad school. Broken windows theory is a criminal justice theory. This theory correlates like this, Diamond Thomas. It says that, and this is a theory that explains why crime happens. We don't believe that crime just happens for no reason. We feel like we can explain why crime happens. So according to this theory, big crimes like rape and murder, burglaries, these big crimes happen and terrorize a neighborhood when you let the small crimes go. So in many ways, so in looking at it like this, right? If somebody throws a brick through a window, it looks like no big deal, right? The police have other fish to fry. So why are you harassing and spending so much time arresting and prosecuting people that have broken windows? But according to this theory, Devicia, if you let that slide, it's slowly going to correlate with wider crimes. So according to this theory, you have to be really tough on the small crimes, and then that variable of being tough on small crimes will be correlated with reduced crime. Again, empiricism, we can see the crime rate. So New York City, for example, so y'all remember Eric Gardner, correct? Who's Eric Gardner?
He was the one that the police killed when he was on the side selling loose cigarettes.
Exactly. Do y'all think that selling loose cigarettes without a license is illegal? It's common in many Black and brown neighborhoods all across the country. Cigarettes are very costly, and a lot of people don't feel like buying a whole box of cigarettes. They may just want to buy one, a loosie. So Eric Garner was facilitating this service, but it is illegal. That is what the police encountered him for selling loosie cigarettes. Do y'all think that's worth him? That justifies him dying? I surely don't. But according to broken windows theory, because New York City was very aggressive in utilizing broken windows theory. So this made it where, Nashaya, if you was doing something like smoking loosie cigarettes, if you were doing graffiti, you all probably familiar, they got the subway system in New York. And I know you all may find this hard to believe, Janiyah, but sometimes, so you're supposed to be putting your money in the fare. Sometimes people will jump and hop over the turnstile and ride the train for free. Amazing, isn't it? The police began cracking down really hard on those crimes. So before, you might have gotten a fine, you might have got probation, you might have gotten a warning. Now they putting people doing you finna do a year or two in jail for selling a loosie cigarette. Cause you you're smoking a blunt in the train turnstile, or even smoking cigarettes. That was illegal too. I remember very vividly. One of my first times of going to New York City, one of my homies had lit up a cigarette in a train turnstile, which again is very common in Chicago, in most major cities. And the police, it was like a pack of police was on us, man. Like we was invading the Capitol or something. Oops, I forgot. They don't really give a lot of police attention to stuff like that. But y'all get my example. Going back to the theory, follow the correlations. If we're tough on the small crimes, if we're tough and we lock a lot of people up for the small crimes, so we can say that, hey, we locked up 20,000 people this year for misdemeanors compared to 3,000 a year before, and our crime rate went down 7-8%. We had less murders, we had less burglaries, we had less rapes. That theory has not shown a lot of empirical support, though, but a lot of people were arrested in the process. These are important concepts because these theories, this ain't just something that we do in academia. These things end up being affecting real policy and how we treat people in this country. So it's really important that people look like us begin to do more of this social science. Otherwise, really ridiculous stuff like the broken windows theory could be allowed to be utilized and justify locking up a whole bunch of people that don't need to be in prison. Continuing on, a very important aspect that you need to do, Latasia Richardson, in doing social research, right, you're focused on aggregates, not individuals. As I talked about before, when you see something in italics, study that closely. I'll break these down in more detail in a moment and speak to some of your specific research topics. I know I mentioned some from Nashaya, Davicia, Janai. If others, again, have working research topics that they want to introduce into this discussion, feel free. Are there any questions so far?
No questions.
Oftentimes when we make social observations, we look at individual cases. We might make statements that I'm like, it's not true that men make more than women because, Oprah, she's really rich. It's not true that that Black people are mistreated by the police because compared to other groups, because I saw this YouTube video of this white man who was doing nothing at all, and the police just murdered him in cold blood. It's not true that COVID has any kind of impact upon mental health, Janiyah. I feel great. I'm good. COVID ain't got no effect on mental health. It's not true that there really is, a COVID pandemic. I don't know nobody that got COVID. It ain't really even happening. It's true that homosexuality is caused by molestation because my little nephew was molested when he was 6 and now he's homosexual. These are the kind of claims, and I could go on and on and on, all types of claims that people make all the time. And those things are true. Like your nephew may really have been molested and he may really be homosexual now. Now that doesn't necessarily suggest that he's homosexual because he was molested. More than one thing can be true. The same way that in the summertime, ice cream sales go up and crime goes up. We're not so silly to believe that ice cream causes crime to rise, right? Additionally, we don't want to look at the isolated case. When we're making conclusions in social science, we're looking, again, we talked about regularities before, right? Regularities. So to make conclusions about what regularly happens, you have to look at the collective actions and situations. There are always exceptions, always exceptions. It is true that Oprah makes more money than some countries. I'm honestly not sure if that's even an exaggeration. I'm joking, but I'm not sure if it is a joke. Oprah's buku paid. Was hoping to run up on her many a days in Chicago and see if I could be her house husband. Many days going through Chicago, it didn't quite work out. That's neither here nor there. So Devisha, in doing your research, you cannot just be looking at individual cases of abuse. You need to look at, and again, there are always going to be exceptions. What you're looking at is the aggregate. If you're looking at 18 to 25-year-olds who are being abused, you want to look at all of it. And look, sometimes your aggregate may be the entire country. It could be only all Black people. It could be only people from South Carolina. It can only be people with advanced degrees. Like, you can be very specific with your group, but you want to be very clear that you're speaking to the patterns amongst a wide range of situations, not just isolated cases. In social science, we try and focus on aggregated patterns of behavior, particularly, right, when we see individual changes over time. So for example, very quickly, right, we talked about a theory. And what does the theory try to do again? What does the theory try to do?
To explain the relationship of cause and effect.
Good. So one of the things, particularly, again, I'm sure for many of my criminal justice majors on here, one of the things that we often try and explain the cause and effect, one area where we often try and explain cause and effect, it's related to crime. Why do certain crimes occur, like, at different periods of time? Why is this neighborhood, have more crime ridden than this neighborhood just a few blocks away? Why does this age group commit more crime than this age group? Why is there more crime amongst this race and this race? Why is this particular crimes, such as rape, more common amongst white men than other groups? In trying to answer these questions, we try and formulate theories of why. And for many years, the reasons why, Nashai, will be based upon some personal trait, particularly something genetic. So they would say that, like, Black people commit crimes, Italian commit crimes because of their genetics. It's just something in our blood that makes us commit crimes. Today in 2021, we can pretty clearly see that that's ridiculous. Most of us can. There are people who still say stuff like this. But the main thing that has an impact upon whether or not people commit crime, what do y'all think it is? What's the main thing? I'll give you a hint. It's the main thing. Well, let me ask you that. Let me say it this way. It's the main thing that influences almost all of us and almost everything that we do. And in this case, it ain't money, although money's related to it. The people that we are, what do you think has the biggest influence on that? Who we become, the things we like, the things we do. Come on, social scientists, what has the biggest influence?
Who you grew up around?
Yes, and to hone that in, your environment. Very good,
Yes.
Janaya. The environment that you were raised in. That you could grow up in a very different environment, and I know you may find this hard to believe. A lot of you'd be very different. Small things were like, if you grew up in Saudi Arabia, like you would be a Muslim. Even you same individuals. So this is, if that's true with something like that, that's true with something like your life expectancy. There are certain communities, Diamond, where people, like, so in Harlem, New York, people live on average like 20 years less than people that live in Manhattan, in uptown Manhattan, just a few blocks, I'm sorry, downtown Manhattan. Harlem is uptown. Then downtown Manhattan, just a few blocks away. We know that, again, the environment has an impact upon, like, so in Chicago, for example, it has the largest amount of asthmatic babies in the world. I'm sorry, in the country, definitely not in the world. I don't know if that's still true, but it was true through most of the 20th century. Chicago, as you know, is associated with being a high crime area, a high crime city. But when you really unpack it, Diamond, it's not like it's just a wild, wild west all over Chicago. Much like any city that you're from, I'm sure there are some high crime areas, but it's not like that crime is dispersed just everywhere. There are certain areas of the city where crime is more prevalent. So concentric zone theory, and this is not just related to Chicago, but Chicago is where this theory was first tested out in the 1940s and 50s. And the basic premise of this theory is that the further you lived away from the downtown areas of your city, the more crime you had. Why do you think that is? Anybody? The further you lived away from the downtown areas of your city, the more crime you had. Don't worry about if your answer is right or wrong, but what variable do you think explains that relationship? What variable do you think explains that relationship? The further you live away from downtown, Chicago, New York, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Columbia, Charleston. Why do you think that is? No wrong answers. I need y'all to think with me though, Black people.
I guess in the town part, you have more to do than staying in the country part.
You're on the
So you
right
be
track.
more,
Your thinking is on the right track.
There's more activities going on within those areas
Say it again.
because there's more like activities going on within that area, like more traffic.
What and what kind of you're on the right track. What kind of activities and what kind of things you think may bring that traffic? And what area are you talking about, Devicia? I mean, Janaya. I think that was Janaya.
Didn't you say like New York or something like that?
Yeah. So when you say like so,
Because you got like tourists and things of that nature, people just visiting.
are you talking about the downtown area or other parts?
Were you speaking of specifically the downtown area? Then if so, then I'm speaking on the downtown area.
Yes. So the theory says the further you get away from downtown,
Okay.
the more the crime will raise. So you were saying, so when you were saying that there was more traffic, were you saying downtown or were you saying the further away from the cities? Downtown. I'm sorry.
Further away from the city, downtown.
Okay, good. So generally, no matter what city you're in, there's more traffic, there is more activity downtown. You all are absolutely right. Why? What do you think? What do you think is bringing so many people downtown? It might not be true in other parts of a city, but what's almost always true downtown? Don't overthink it. Y'all be going downtown in various cities. Some of y'all probably grew up in big cities. It's a lot more jobs downtown. So it's like the activity is that people go and shop and they're doing business down there. And then there's a lot of people that come down there that don't live there and they're going to work, taking trains, buses into downtown New York because that's where the work is. What about when you get further away from the city? I mean, further away from downtown. Oftentimes you see fewer businesses. It's a lot less traffic. I know again, in Chicago, like you can go down a straight line and you see hustle and bustle, boom, 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 all types of business, everything going on. Then the further you get south, it almost become a wasteland. Almost like you're in two different cities. Some of y'all have lived in cities, you visited different cities, I'm sure. Have y'all observed that in the cities that y'all have gone into? Yeah, that's true almost everywhere. So as a result, it ain't no surprise that, yeah, if it ain't as many jobs in these neighborhoods and as much activity and stuff like that, and then because there's so many people downtown, Janaya, if like that don't mean it ain't criminally minded people down there, you're actually gonna be a lot more mindful and attentive about when and how you commit crime. So the theory again contends, and follow me along here. I know it's been a lot. We can go back over this either during class or office hours if need be. That the variables here that the belief was that people just commit crimes because they're bad people, because they're a certain race. No, like so in Chicago, for example, what they found, Diamond, is that there are certain neighborhoods, Italian people live there, Irish people live there, Black people live there, Hispanic people live there over a period like 100 years. You know what was true during all those different periods when all them different groups was living there? It was a lot of crime. It ain't particular to just Black people. It ain't just particular to Hispanic people. You put some white folks in them very same neighborhoods, man, you're going to see crime. We don't have to take my word for these things. It's a whole bunch of research around to reflect that. And that's important because a lot of times the view might be that we need to target we need to put a lot of police in a Black neighborhood. Now, you might need to put a lot of police in a poor neighborhood, and more than police, you know what you really need to put in these neighborhoods? Some jobs. If you do that, maybe the crime goes down and we don't need as many police, but whatever. Sorry. Anyway, so variables, right? Coming home here. This is where I really need you to put your topics in mind. Variables are logical groupings of attributes. So, Janaya, what would you identify so far? I know again, we're still working with some of the questions. What would you identify as the variables that you're looking at so far? I hate to put you on the spot, but I think you got a pretty good command of this. And don't worry if it's not perfect.
As far as my research,
Say it again. Yes.
The variables that I decided to go for is, hold on, make sure I say it right, because I wrote it down. Basically, how does the role of annual income explain the increasing rate of suicide in America during COVID?
Good. So there are two variables there. What are they?
The annual income
Good.
that America makes and the increasing rate of suicide.
Excellent. Excellent. And again, right? So why do you think that Janaya looked at income? Why do you think that was a logical grouping of attribute? It is. Why do you think that income would make sense for her to look at the relationship? So she's saying there that she thinks that how much money you make could have an impact upon, we can explain the rate of suicide by looking at people's income during this pandemic. Why might that make sense? Why is that logical? Don't overthink it. Anybody.
Because that's something you can measure.
That's one reason, but what else? It's definitely something you can measure. But why might it make sense to look at income?
I mean, because since COVID, people been losing jobs. And,
That's true too, but that ain't the reason. Any of y'all got any income? Ain't nobody on this piece got no job? I know we got some working folks on here, man. Come on, somebody. Have y'all ever had a job before?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How has your experience been when you've had some money and when you ain't? Income affects
Because when
everything.
you have money, you don't really worry about too much. But if you broke, you'll be worrying about how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna do that. You stress a lot.
Yes. Income. So yes, it would be practical to think that income might have an impact upon how you deal with your mental health during COVID. But make no mistake, income affects everything in America. Keep this in mind, right? Because there are certain variables that we look to often to explain things that they quite frankly explain all types of results and outcomes. Again, we want to look at cause and effect. So there's a group of variables that have all types of effects on all types of stuff. Income should not have an impact upon that. It should not be a situation where your ability to navigate through suicide and having resources should be affected by your income. But my sense is it probably is. Me and Janaya did the research yet, but I would be surprised if it's not a relationship. So income is one variable, right, that we look at in social sciences a lot. Let me give some more extra credit points down before we get ready to break for today. What are some other variables? And look at it this way, right? That if you can tell me somebody's income, it can help explain all types of other things about them, whether it be their mental health, where they live, where their kids go to school, how often they get vacations, what type of leisure activities they do. I can project a lot of that just by income. What are some other variables in American society that we look at a lot that can explain a whole bunch of things?
How much education they got?
Excellent. Write these down with your classmates. Say it again.
Religion.
Sorry. Yep. What else? Two really important ones, ladies.
Gender.
Yes.
Race.
Yes. Good. Income, race, gender, religion, education. These are variables that we use often in social science diamond times to predict all types of stuff. That if you can tell me a person's race, gender, education, I can probably tell you who they voted for in the election. I can probably tell you if they live in a city or a rural area. I can probably give you a sense of how many kids they got. I can give you a sense of how often they go to the doctor. If they have a therapist, a mental health therapist. All these, man, just by your race, your gender, your education. income, religious background. You tell me their income and education level, I could tell. We can predict pretty safely how often they do things like go to church. What do y'all think is the relationship between income and church attendance?
You gotta pay them tithes.
Say it again.
You said the relationship between income and church.
And church attendance. That we can put a number. We can put a number on your income. We could put a number on how often you attend church each month. What do you think is a relationship? Anybody? The higher the income, the lower the level of church attendance. Do your own research. The lower the income, the higher the rate of church attendance. So keep these things in mind for your own research, particularly for those of you that still struggle with research questions. Looking at some of those variables that I mentioned is never a bad place to start because they are so important in explaining all types of things about American life and behavior. It's unfortunate that that's the case. It should be that, you know, whether or not you're born a Black woman into a single parent family that makes like that's Jewish and makes less than $30,000 a year, that shouldn't have an impact, but oftentimes it does. So these variables again are logical. And then look at the word, right? Variables. So Janaya, income is the variable, and what it speaks to is that there are varying levels of income. Some people make 25,000, some make 50,000, some make 100,000. There are varying races. Some people are white, some people are Black, some people are Hispanic, some people are Asian. There are varying levels of education level. Some people have 16 years of education level. Some people have 12 years. Some people have 10 years of education level. They're varying religions. Some people are Catholic. Some people are Jewish. Some people are Muslim. Y'all hear what I'm saying? This would be a segment of, again, I know it's a lot. I know y'all probably tired. I'm working on my second Red Bull myself, Janaya Barnes. So this might be a section of this might be a section of the lecture that you might want to go back and review, but we're going to talk about this in great detail. Let's look at them a little bit more carefully. Variables and attributes. Again, some common social concepts. And what this speaks to, Nashaya, is that your personal background has an impact upon all types of things. Young people and old people see the world differently. People that are plumbers might have different perspectives than people that are lawyers. African Americans definitely will view the world differently than somebody that may be Asian American. Women and men have different experiences. So those are attributes, things like young, social class. The variable will be where you put a number to it. So the age. So in your research, Davisha, you wouldn't just say young people, you would say people between age 18 to 25. If you want to study the relationship between team sports and pregnancy, you can say that. But if you're looking for the relationship with female participation, you have to be very specific with that wording. If you want to look at the relationship between race and phobia, Nashaya, you might need to look at a very specific phobia and then determine, do you want to look at all races or do you just want to compare Black people and white people? If you're going to look at, social class, Shania, don't just say upper middle. Do you mean people that make less than 35,000 a year? Do you mean the people that make 50,000? And you probably will see some patterns amongst those different groups. Is this clear so far? And if it's not, please let me know. Because it's okay if it's not clear. I know it's a lot. But definitely go back and review this. Again, like I said, it's even helpful for me. So many of you all are beginning to already think about the variables that you want to measure in terms of the cause and effect that you expect to see. So again, one of the things I'm going to test you about on Thursday is identifying the independent and dependent variables. So again, you got two variables, and you can use more than two. You can use more than two if you want to, because one of the things that's really important to know, Nashaya, it is very rare that one thing causes anything. So just because you a female, that means that you ain't gonna make as much money as a male? No. If you have a brother, Nashaya, and you're a female with more education, and better health, and you're doing different career tracks, you probably will have, and you live in a different state, you probably will have an opportunity. So there's no one variable that explains almost anything about human behavior. But the interview, again, what we try and do in theories is we try and explain some type of observable cause and effect. Observable cause and effect. The independent variable is just what causes the effect. I know I got a lot of the full definition there, but I want y'all to remember, Davicia, the independent variable is what caused the effect. The independent variable is what caused the effect. The independent variable is what caused the effect. Janaya, in your example, income is the independent variable. Income is your independent variable. In this way, Janaya, what you're proposing is that if you make $35,000 a year, it's going to have this effect. If you make $50,000 a year, it's going to have this different effect. If you make $100,000 a year, it's going to have this different effect. And that effect should be measured by, or should be represented by, the different suicide rates. The suicide rate amongst people over $100,000 or more is just 3.3%. For 50,000, it's 7.8%. And again, I'm just throwing it out there. Quite frankly, I think those numbers might be reversed. You may be surprised, but actually, people, at least in my casual observation of the research, you're going to look at this a lot more deeply than I ever have. But oftentimes, people with more income, the suicide rate is often higher amongst them. Very strange. Money can't buy you love and happiness, Diamond Thomas. Independent variables. Again, the dependent variable, this independent variable has to be in place to cause this other effect. Let's look at some examples very quickly. You don't have to write all this down. You can feel free if you want to. You don't have to. I'll leave it up for a couple of moments for you either way. Keep in mind, Latasia, what we're talking about here, we expect for change in one to have a change in another. The colder it gets, the more clothes that people put on. The lower your blood sugar has what type of effects? We don't believe that you just getting a headache out of nowhere, Nashaya. There's something that causes this. Oh, I need to eat. Damn. Been so busy, I haven't thought about eating. We've all had that happen, right? So again, you all have looked at cause and effect many times in your own lives. So we know, for example, and again, right, we do not overgeneralize. We do not overgeneralize, Nashaya. We don't say that, again, that education makes people vote. Be very careful with the wording, okay? So we talk about correlations or things that make something more likely. So y'all see that fourth one there. The more than one smoke cigarettes, the more likely they are to develop lung cancer. There's some people that get lucky. Not everybody that smokes a lot of cigarettes gets lung cancer, but it increases your chances dramatically. Not everybody that cross the street without looking both ways gets hit by cars. It increases your chance dramatically. So when we talk about our variables and likelihood, and as young Black people, it is really important for you to understand these things, because there are so many variables in your life in the Shire that will impact future results. Education ain't finna guarantee that you're gonna make a lot of money and stuff. It increases your chances dramatically in America. The same way, the more education you have, the more formal use of education. And again, we can put numbers on this. 88% of people who had 12 years or more of education voted in the last election, compared to just 12% of people who had 12 years or less. The more attractive a person is according to the culture standard of beauty, and each culture has its different standard. What may be attractive amongst Japanese Americans may not be the same thing that's attractive amongst Puerto Rican Americans. But the more that you fit into the standards of beauty in America, the higher your income. Devisia, it has been found, and again, all these, like everything I'm saying here, right, has been researched very closely. As always, you can do your own research. A child's success in school, Devisia, has been found to be correlated with the number of books the parent has in the home. Now, listen at this stat. It don't even say nothing about reading the books, Janaya. Just the presence of books. The child is, again, what do we talk about the environment, right? How that has an impact upon things. The child just seeing the books. Because again, these things got to be logical, right? What do you think that communicates to this young child? No wrong answers. What do you think that the presence of these books communicates to this child? Anybody? It communicates that education is important, and they begin to value it subconsciously. That's how much of the human brain works. We soak up things, particularly as small children, in our subconscious. That's why we're very mindful about the things we expose young children to. So keep these things in mind. Again, these things have been researched very carefully. And then I know you all will probably find this final one shocking, but researchers bore this out, Diamond Thomas. The more hours that students put into studying, the better grades that students get. It's amazing. Now, a couple of final quick points. I won't delve into this too deeply yet. We're going to have whole chapters devoted to each of these topics. When I talk about empiricism, Janaya, that again speaks to having some observable evidence that you and I can both see to make certain scientific conclusions. Oftentimes, that's put in the form of numbers. But there's a lot of data that we can also accumulate that's not expressed through numbers. That we feel like, again, that we can, something like one of the things you talked about in your research proposed question, Devisia, was embarrassment. That's hard to put a number on, but we can find a way to measure it. We just got to be very deliberate about how we do so. Keep in mind, at the end of all this, you're going to have to do a research proposal. And please make note of how the chapters are laying out the different things that will help you along the way to this process. It's really important to understand, Latasia, that this is a process. This is not something that you want to pick up at the middle of the semester. It is designed for you to do a little bit at a time. And hopefully, again, for some of y'all that want to go into grad school, I would encourage you to, whatever you think that you might want to research there, you can start that process with this class if you want to, because it should really be important that it's a topic that's going to hold your interest. But be mindful of the different steps that we're going to take along the way. And most importantly, be mindful where you can find in your textbook some guidance and assistance on these different steps. Are there any questions or comments before we leave for the day?
Okay.
All right, young people. Well, again, if there's anything that you need to take in, please make sure that you do so. We're going to begin the next chapter on Thursday, Paradise Theory and Research. Make note that, again, your first writing assignment is due on Thursday. If you have any questions about, completing it, let me know. You submit it on the coursework portion of on our e-learning. Make sure that you submit it there. Do not wait until right at 1 o'clock to submit it. In case there are any technical difficulties, I need you to bring them to my attention as quickly as possible, and we can get them squared away. If no one has any other questions, I will see you all on Thursday. Have a wonderful afternoon. Say again. Okay. Did anybody? Okay, for sure.